Let me thank your organization as well for the work in organizing the event and for your advocacy on this issue, and to Senator Warren, who's been a fantastic voice before she came to the Senate in her roles of creating the Consumer Protection Bureau, and ultimately she has brought that same vigor to the Senate Banking Committee, which has been extraordinarily welcome. And to all the distinguished participants on the panel, I'm going to, after my remarks, listen to Senator Warren, and then I have the Prime Minister of Iraq, so I'm going to have to leave after that. But I do have staff here who want to listen to the panel. And your panel has some of the nation's leading governance, corporate governance scholars and representatives from the investor community who are here to basically discuss what I still believe very strongly is a critical need for corporate disclosure of campaign spending. Disclosure of corporate political spending has, in my mind, very clear value for our democracy. It comes in the form of transparency. It comes by cleaning up campaign finance, keeping the election process free and fair of superfunded outside influences here in the United States or from elsewhere. According to Open Secrets, outside groups spent more than $1 billion in the 2012 federal elections, with much of it funneled through trade associations and nonprofits with minimal disclosure. But even if you set the benefits to our democracy aside, which obviously are primary for me, the case for disclosure is still clear and convincing. Purely as a matter of corporate governance and investor protection, I think they are compelling. SEC Chair Mary Jo White has spoken recently about focusing corporate disclosure on providing investors with the information they find necessary and material to make informed investment and voting decisions. In this case, while disclosure of corporate political spending has important social benefits, it's also, from my perspective, a no-brainer simply in terms of good corporate governance and investor protection policy. And as I expect our panelists will discuss, this information is very material to how shareholders decide where to invest their money and how to vote in corporate elections. It's simple. It's shareholders' money, and they should know whether the corporate managers who work for them are spending it for political purposes, and if so, what are those purposes in terms of, is it aligned with the corporation's interests? Is it aligned with the shareholder interests? Is it aligned with their values under which many investors ultimately decide to invest, particularly when you look at pension funds and other entities that become major investors? And so it seems to me that for those who argue against this, it splits both ways. You might have shareholders who say, yeah, I believe in that spending because it may, from my perspective, ultimately create the advocacy on policy or individuals who will ultimately improve the shareholders' bottom line. That might be a view. The other view might be that, no, I don't believe that this is an appropriate use of shareholders' monies because it's not aligned with the company's interests, it's not aligned with the investor's social values, it's not aligned in essence with the very core of what an investor is looking for in their company. So I can make the argument either way, and either way, transparency is a good thing. As many of you know, after the Supreme Court's Citizens United decision, I introduced the Shareholder Protection Act to require public companies to disclose their political spending and to require a shareholder vote to approve it. I think it's common sense legislation, and I want to thank Senator Warren for her co-sponsorship of the bill. But even under current law, without that legislation, the SEC does have the power right now to require corporations to disclose their political spending to investors. And it has received a record number of comments, 640,000 and counting, urging it to act and use that power. Now, I suspect some of you in this room have been among the 640,000 that may have written, and I thank you for that. And I want to thank Professor Robert Jackson for his leadership on this issue in submitting the initial rulemaking petition urging the SEC to act, and our panelists for their leadership on this matter. which I think is critical. I never quite understand how ultimately disclosure transparency is a bad thing. And I do not accept that it is so onerous on the companies as so to undermine their ability to be successful financially. I do think that it is important for shareholders to understand what their company is doing that they are making investments in as it relates to the shareholders' investment not only monetarily, but in what they believe that company is all about and what it should ultimately stand for. And we've already seen some examples of some companies that made investments in candidates who supported positions that were totally adverse to the broad understanding of what those shareholders hold as their values and reacted violently against it. It is the ability to simply do that, to have that information in the first instance that I've urged the SEC chair to use, even though she is being browbeated by a whole host of individuals, particularly on the House side, against using that effort. I think that our collective voices as citizens are incredibly important to assuage her to understand that the power that is there is one that should be used at a minimum. Thank you very much for your attention.